finally live on Facebook and Instagram. Took a minute. So, success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. That's what Winston Churchill said. So, hi, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me. And in the next 15 minutes, I'll be sharing with you 3 things that you can do to help you stay motivated as an entrepreneur. Because I know sometimes it could be really, really difficult to stay motivated because there's so much that happens as entrepreneurs, right? It's like a roller coaster ride. But before I get started into all of that, I'm Dr. P. I'm a strategic business coach, and I've been a school psychologist before becoming a business coach. Served on professional organization committees, taught more than 10 online graduate psychology courses at the master's level, and I absolutely love doing what I do. I really do. The motivation is a big part of it. So Winston Churchill said, success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And like I said, it can be really hard because when we experience those challenges, it can hit us so hard that we don't want to keep going, right? Because, like I said, it can be really difficult for us. And that's why this quote is so relevant to each and every one of us as entrepreneurs. Because, oh my God, the roller coaster ride, right? And you know what I'm talking about. You're talking about those days when things are really, really good and everything is going great and we're really excited about it. And things feel so awesome with our businesses. Then we get those bad days, those challenging days, those tough days, those difficult days. And they hit hard, right? They hit really, really hard. And to get us through those days, we have to stay motivated. We do. We have to stay motivated. So that's why in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 things that we can do as entrepreneurs to help us sustain motivated. So as a school psychologist, I remember there were days that I felt like there were so many initiatives and changes and requirements and expectations that were being placed on us. Then there were some directives that came through as well. And when that happened, it really felt like I was spending more time dealing with like the politics of everything rather than on the school psychology part that I really enjoyed. And it was a little difficult on those days, to be honest. Those days were just a little bit difficult. And it just had me going like, okay, should I keep going? Why am I even doing this? All these questions come in our head. And as a business owner, same thing happens on those tough days. A lot of questions come into my head. So what really helped me get through those tough days as a school psychologist was looking at what I had to do. And instead of looking at like the big overall part of it, just taking it and breaking it down into smaller parts. And that really helped me with focusing too, because when you look at this huge task that you have to do, and especially if it's something that you don't want to do, you really can find every reason not to do it. But if you get the time, or if you find the time really, and you sit and you break down that big task into smaller tasks, I found that it was helpful for me, and it really helped me to feel motivated. Why? Because I was getting these little bits of success along the way, and then before I knew it, oh my gosh, that big overwhelming thing that I was trying to avoid, I was able to accomplish. So that helped. And then another thing that I had to realize was I had to start monitoring the amount of time that I was spending in what I was calling consulting with colleagues. And y'all know what I'm talking about. When you go and you're talking to a colleague and you start having a conversation about an issue that both of you are involved in and you're looking at problem solving. And that lasts, so let's be honest, for like 15 minutes, right? But then 45 more minutes later, you engage in a conversation that probably had nothing to do with the whole reason you were in there in the first place. You end up talking about all these different things. So a full hour later, what have you accomplished? You've accomplished avoiding what you were supposed to be doing rather than actually doing what you should have been doing. So is that procrastination coming into play again? So there are different things that we can do to help us sustain motivated. And procrastinating is not one of them. Because guess what? The more you avoid doing it, the more you still have to do it, right? Because you can avoid it, but it's not going anywhere. Whatever is that big task that you have to face. And then there was also when you get feedback from a supervisor. That was another one that could hit at my motivation. is sometimes, when you get the feedback, and it's constructive feedback, right? But for some reason, if there was one negative thing in there that your supervisor said, chances are we latched on to that. Why do we do that, right? There were tons of positive things and tons of positives about the growth that you made, about your performance, but for some reason we're just focused on this negative, and then we start really internalizing that negative and looking at it as a failure, and then we don't really want to do anything, right? Because we're focusing on this negative. But the thing is that rather than focus on the negative of feedback, we really need to be focusing on the positives, right? Because you're being praised for something that you did. And I know, as an entrepreneur, you're your own boss. So are you even taking time to praise yourself for the good that you've been doing? Or are you just sitting down and nitpicking at everything that has gone wrong? Because that's something we really need to pay attention to. Yeah, we are our own business, our bosses. We're our own bosses for our business, but we still need to take some time out to give ourselves that constructive feedback, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur. If you have team members, reach out to your team members for feedback from them as well. Bill Gates said, it's fine to celebrate success, but it's more important to heed the lessons of failure. That's what Bill Gates said. So when you're looking at going through those lessons of failures, we are going to be relying on our motivation to help us get through the lesson. If not, well, you know what? Let's not talk about the if not part. Let's focus on the positives, because that's what this whole video is about focusing on the positives to help us stay motivated, because I don't want to be focusing on the negatives, right? Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That was a really interesting one, because failing 10,000 times, he still kept going. He still kept being motivated. Why? Because he was focusing on the reason why he was doing what he was doing. So could that be what motivation means to you? Yo, Lorenzo, thanks for joining. Just talking about how we can stay motivated as entrepreneurs, because it can be pretty tough. And I was just talking about Thomas Edison, and he mentioned that he hasn't failed. He just found 10,000 ways that didn't work, right? And it's what helps us to get up and keep going, that really helps us as moving forward, staying motivated. So in Psychology Today, motivation was defined as the desire to act in the service of a goal. It's a crucial element in setting and attaining our objectives. And that's true. It is a crucial element in us attaining what we set out to do. When we started our business, right, it is crucial. Psychology Today also described motivation as the driving force behind what we do. Talking about that driving force behind our actions. That's what motivation is, that driving force. Because when we're unmotivated, or there's an absence of motivation, lack of motivation, we may develop depression and that loss of interest in doing things that we enjoy. And as business owners, that could be a loss of interest in your business. And that's not why you started it in the first place. You started your business because you had a passion, you had a drive, you had a desire to really give others something that you thought that they needed. So when you start losing that passion, then that's not a good sign. And by the way, if you are feeling like that's where you are right now, I really highly recommend that you reach out to a mental health professional in your area. There are also apps that you can go on and reach out to a mental health professional so that you can get the supports that you need, because your business, you created it for a reason. And sometimes we do need help, so it might be that you need some help right now so you can keep that business going. So how can we stay motivated as entrepreneurs when we're going through all those many challenging times, right? Because it's still really difficult to do that. I was reading this article on business.com where motivation was compared to the fuel in a plane, planes need fuel in order to move, right? So they were comparing motivation for entrepreneurs as fuel in a plane. How many of you agree with that? Raise your hand, because that really is a good way of looking at it. Motivation is that fuel for helping us to keep moving forward. And when you don't have that motivation, you can be just stuck and you're not moving forward. And that can be damaging for our businesses. So of course, when I read that part about motivation being the fuel for the business, just like how fuel is so important for our plane, I was there shaking my head going, yep, that's so true. It is so important for our business. Like Psychology Today had mentioned, it's a crucial element in what we're doing. So if you're a solo entrepreneur, it's just you because you're a solo entrepreneur. If you have a team, then your team is going to be observing your motivation. So as a solo entrepreneur, you can be realizing when you're up and when you're down with that motivation, right? And your team, if you have a team, your team might be seeing when you are motivated and when you're not motivated. And guess what? Your team could be feeding off of you. And if your team members are seeing that you are no longer motivated to be doing your business, they might even leave because they could be like, hey, if you are motivated to be here, why the hell should I stay in this business? And they can leave. And then you end up losing a very crucial employee for your business. So again, motivation is that fuel we have for our businesses, driving our actions that we're doing, whether it's through good times and through bad. We have our motivation. So remember, at the beginning of this, I mentioned Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill said, success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. That's why we need to talk about how we can stay motivated as entrepreneurs. So the 3 things I wanted to share with you. First one, maintain a positive mindset and a headspace. So don't focus on those negative aspects. Stop focusing on the failures and the things that, you weren't able to do. Focus on the lesson that you're learning from those failures. Think about how you can use your strengths to put into action the lesson that you learned from the failure that you experienced, right? And then how that will help you with moving your business forward into the future towards those goals that you have for your business. And having a healthy routine can also help with getting your mind in the right headspace. So I'm talking about, having that diet and exercise. Meditation can even be a part of that routine because you want to make sure that you have that positive headspace for when you're going through, learning from a lesson that is connected to a failure. And set aside some time for yourself in that routine where you can do something that you enjoy, because it's all about getting your head back into a positive space. And doing something you enjoy can be a great way of doing that, right? And it's also awesome stress reliever if you're doing something that you enjoy doing. And in doing that, you get reinvigorated, re-energized, and you go back into work the next day, just feeling so positive. So that's that first one, have that positive mindset, that whole positive headspace. The second one is stop spending time on actions that are getting you absolutely nowhere. Stop it. Okay, so you experience a failure. Okay, we all experience failures. Don't start increasing your time on social media, scrolling through people's posts on social media, going from one group to the other and just scrolling through and just wasting time on those things, or spending a lot of time in clubhouse rooms. I was talking to somebody recently and they told me that they know of someone who said they spent like 30 hours in 1 week on Clubhouse, but yet none of it pertained to what they're doing in their life. So don't be one of those people, right? Don't be scrolling through social media for hours, jumping from clubhouse room to clubhouse room, and don't just start buying up courses online just to take them. Because at the end of the day, you have goals for your business. You do. You shouldn't be spending time on actions that are not beneficial for your business, right? You should be looking at your goals. So instead of procrastinating, look over your goals. Even if they seem big, like I mentioned before, when it seems big, you can make it into smaller goals and then tackle each one of those small goals. So do the actions to accomplish each one of those smaller tasks. And remember to set some deadlines for when you have to accomplish the task. And be realistic. You should be realistic about it. Then, of course, celebrate your success and revisit and revise your goals. Because you want to make sure whatever actions you're taking, they are supporting you moving your business towards the goals that you have for success for your business. So that's the second one. The first one was maintain a positive mindset. The second one was stop spending time on actions that are getting you nowhere in your business. And the third one is incentives. So oftentimes a lot of business owners only think of incentives when they have a team, and they forget about rewarding themselves. So even if you're a solo entrepreneur or not, you still should think about rewarding yourself and giving yourself some incentive to help keep you motivated, because not everybody's intrinsically motivated. Some of us, we do need extrinsic motivation, and even those who have high intrinsic motivation. Sometimes every now and then an external motivator goes a long way, right? So I'm talking about looking at those small tasks that you found for the big goal, those small things that you have to accomplish, and consider giving yourself some type of incentive every time you complete one, right? And those things could be, lunch at your favorite place, dinner at your favorite place, watching a movie, even going on a vacation, or buying something online that you have been eyeing for months and keep telling yourself you shouldn't buy it. But I do caution you though, the type of incentive and reward that you're going to give yourself, make sure it matches the type of action that you're completing. And something like a vacation, you might want to reserve that one for a time when you've completed a big goal and really give yourself a big reward. Just something for you to consider. So these are just a few ways to help us stay motivated as entrepreneurs. Now, I challenge you to go and try one of them. And also let me know how it turns out. I'm Dr. Priscilla Kuser with Priscilla Kuser Consulting Solutions. Remember, solutions plus actions equals results. Thank y'all for joining me. And I'm sorry I started a few minutes late, y'all. Bye.